Who should you draft number 1 overall in fantasy football? Wide receiver, running back? The number 1 overall pick really comes down to philosophy. I believe the running back position is the most important position in fantasy football, mainly because the drop off between the best running back and the 20th running back is devastating. But the drop off between the best wide receiver and the 20th wide receiver is a little more manageable. So I go running back. But the real question is, which running back? Most of the industry has Jonathan Taylor. I think that is a very, very reasonable choice. Very safe choice. But if you're asking me who is going to score the most points if they are on the field, the answer is Christian McCaffrey. There's the safety in Jonathan Taylor, and then there's the risky in Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, when on the field, is a dominant running back. The problem is he hasn't been on the field. Last year, he only played 7 games. The year before that, he only played 3 games. He's missed most of his games in the past 2 years. But prior to that, he played 16 games in 3 straight years. I don't believe he's injury prone. I believe he's had some bad luck with injuries. Let's look into that. This is Christian McCaffrey's chart from Draft Sharks. Now, Christian McCaffrey's had a few injuries over the last couple years. Let's look a little deeper. Chances of re-injury, 84%. That's a pretty high percentage, but that's to miss at least 2 quarters. 2 quarters is almost no time to miss. Games to miss, 2.2. It's projecting he misses 2 games this year. He's a running back. Running backs tend to miss games. But this is what we want to focus on here. It's not the same injury over and over. Christian McCaffrey has had multiple injuries to different parts of his body. The one that ruled him out last year, a pedal ankle sprain, grade 2. Before that, he had a thigh hamstring strain, grade 2. Then a thigh glute strain in 2020, and a shoulder HC joint in 2020. What do these have in common? Nothing. They're not related. The ankle injury doesn't have anything to do with the thigh injury. It doesn't have anything to do with the shoulder injury. Unless you're saying that he's going to re-injure one of these injuries, I don't think he's injury prone. I just think he's had some bad luck with injuries. There have been plenty of players that have had multiple injuries in the past, and people thought they were injury prone, but they weren't. Keenan Allen used to be looked at as an injury prone wide receiver. He's not. He's been fine the last few years. I think that if you're willing to take the risk, you could reap the rewards. Christian McCaffrey, when on the field, is a better PPR running back than Jonathan Taylor. Yes, I said it. And I'm specifically talking about PPR fantasy football. In standard or half point, I probably think Jonathan Taylor is a lot closer. But in full point PPR, he's better. Let me show you why. Let's look at the receptions. Christian McCaffrey has had multiple years of 100+ receptions. Jonathan Taylor's highest year, 40, and he played all 17 games. Well, they must have some other differences, right? Yeah. Well, Jonathan Taylor had a bunch of yards. Yes, you're right, he did. But so does Christian McCaffrey. Total yards, 3 years ago, Christian McCaffrey had 2,300 yards, almost 2,400 yards. Jonathan Taylor last year did fantastic, but he only had 2,100 yards. So the yard ceiling is higher with Christian McCaffrey. Okay, but what about touchdowns? Well, Jonathan Taylor does have an edge there with 20, but Christian McCaffrey had 19. Also, touchdowns are not a sticky stat. As you can see, they go up, they go down. Jonathan Taylor went from 12 to 20. I don't expect him to get 20 this year. Probably going to get 15, but I don't expect him to get 20. And then the most important thing, let's look at their fantasy football output. Jonathan Taylor had 377 fantasy points last year. That's really good. It's incredible, actually. Christian McCaffrey 3 years ago, 469. That's almost 100 more fantasy points. This is what PPR does. Because he catches so many more balls, he's going to score more points. It really comes down to whether or not he's going to stay on the field. And I think he will. So that's why he's my number 1 overall pick. And that's why he's my number 1 running back.